All right, so here we go, Unit 7, Day 2. Let's get this party started. So there's something called habitat and there's something called niche. Sometimes I'll say niche, sometimes I'll say niche. Have you ever heard that old saying, tomato, tomato? It doesn't matter how I pronounce it. It's the same word. So a habitat is where an organism lives, and a niche is how it lives. So it's kind of similar, but habitat, if an organism lives, for example, in the rainforest, let's say it's a lemur monkey lives in the rainforest. A niche would be how the organism interacts with its environment. So that lemur monkey is going to live in the trees. It's going to swing from the trees. It's going to eat from the trees. It's going to interact with others in the trees. So it's going to be how it behaves there. Now, we're talking animals here, so they are going to have to compete for their resources. These two bears don't have the luxury of going over to Vaughn's and buying some fish whenever they want it. They have to eat it in the wild. All they eat is what they can come across, what they can fight for, what they can work for. So they get very competitive. Now, when these two bears are fighting for one resource, for example, the fish there, one of the bears is going to either have to adapt to work better there, meaning it's going to have to, maybe it would be stronger, maybe it would wake up earlier, maybe it would be able to catch the fish quicker. And one of them is going to be forced into another niche, or it might even become extinct. So those are the three choices. You'll have to know this on the test. They either adapt, they go to another niche, or become extinct. If you have a highlighter, go ahead and highlight that. Now, we can have two species that are similar, but they live in totally different regions. They're called ecological equivalents. Equivalent, kind of like the word equal, right? So they're very similar. These guys don't look the same at all. So this guy right here, he's from Madagascar. That's the little island off of the coast of South Africa. This guy here is from South America. So they're from very, very far away, but they interact with their environments very, very similarly, making it seem that they are very similar species. Now, these guys, they are competing. They're competing for dominance. That's what you'll often see here when you see those rams or another animal fighting, especially with the horns, right? So they're fighting for the same limited resource. Here they may be fighting for the rights of their group, their herd, to live on the land there. They may be fighting for a lady. But it's about dominance. So competition would be about dominance. It would be about being the fittest and the best for the environment. Now, you guys are going to need to know this. And an interaction among animals is called, there's one type, there's many types, but one type is called predation, like as in predator and prey. So this is when one organism, this guy, is going to eat, oh no, this guy. So he is the predator, the wolf is the predator, the, raccoon is the prey. So it could be a snake eating a mouse. And get this, you guys, this one's kind of gnarly. It could be a deer eating grass. Which one's the predator? Which one's the prey? The deer is the predator. The grass is the prey. So it's not necessarily carnivore kind of stuff. It could also be an omnivore or an herbivore eating grass. All right, I know we've seen this word before, symbiosis. And I hope that you remember that symbiosis means working together. So symbiosis is when there's a close relationship between two or more organisms. Now, they're from a different species. Here we have a bee and also a flower, obviously different species. There's three types of symbiosis. There's mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. We're going to talk about those more in depth right now. Oh, actually, we're going to watch a video about it in class. So if there's a spot on your notes that say video notes, just go ahead and leave it blank. No worries. We're going to watch this video in class. Okay, so skipping down to where you see mutualism. Now, mutualism is when both species benefit from their interactions. You know, maybe if you like a girl and she says, "Oh, I like you too," the feeling is mutual, right? You're both feeling the same way. So here we've got when both species benefit from their interactions. You guys are going to need to know examples of all of these on the test for the essay. So definitely remember this. Here we have a rhino, and here we have little birds. So here's what's happening, is that the birds are eating bugs off of the rhino's back. That benefits the bird because they get a free meal. The rhino, how's that benefit him? It benefits him because he doesn't get bit by the bugs. So both species are benefiting. Next one is called commensalism. That's a new vocab word we haven't used yet. So it's when one species benefits while the other is unharmed. So meaning one species is going to get the benefit. I like to do the example here of a, little fish will sometimes kind of hitch a ride on a shark. So a little fish will kind of ride in the wake of a big fish like a shark. Here's his teeth. And these little fish are basically getting a free ride. So that would be an example of commensalism. The shark says, "Hey, I don't care, whatever, I'm going that way anyway." But the fish receive the benefit. Now, lastly is parasitism. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a parasite before. So a parasite, this is an example here, this dog, maybe you've heard of a tapeworm or even ticks. Tapeworms are gnarly. I know they have that show called Monsters Inside Me. I don't know if you've seen that. So one organism benefits while the other is harmed. So that would be the example here. This tapeworm lives inside the dog. It eats all the nutrients instead of letting the dog have them. The tapeworm grows and benefits. The dog becomes sick and skinny. So that is parasitism. I'll send you the link to Mr. Pop. Now, population density and distribution. This looks like a freaking nightmare to me, you guys. I hate crowds. This is a really super crowded beach. Now, we live in a super crowded city called Los Angeles. It's one of the most densely populated cities, definitely in the country, but also even in the world. We just have people everywhere here. Now, population density is how many individuals are living in a certain space. So, it's not all LA. Maybe you guys have ever been up to Bakersfield. There's like basically big farms up there. People aren't living on top of each other like they are here. So that density would be a lot different than Los Angeles. We're not just talking about people. We can also talk about animals here, but population dispersion is how an organism spreads out over land or water. This is our beautiful United States, and you can see that the lighter the shading, the less people that live there. Oh, hello, California. Hello, New York. So you can see a lot of those places have very dense population. Here's Alaska. Ain't nobody there. Here's Montana. Blue skies all the way. So you can see Florida, that has quite a few people. So this is the way that people are spread out. Population dispersion. So you should have 3 boxes that you should be drawing these in. So first I'm going to draw clumped. Here's clumped. So in a clumped dispersion, you can just draw this right in your box. The species are going to be kind of like, almost like little clumps, like little families, little clusters. Next is uniform. So in a uniform dispersion, they're going to be all lined up just like so. Finally, random. This is the fun one. Everywhere. Random. So those are the 3 types. Those are what you should draw in your boxes on your notes. Next up is a survivorship curve. I think this is actually pretty interesting. It shows the number of surviving members over time from their birth. So you guys have this in your notes, I believe, and you can see that, like, if we go from the acorn, this is how many and this is how long they live. So you can see with an acorn, there's many acorns, but then there's very few that actually grow into mature trees. Same with eggs. Many, many eggs. Only a few make it to be a chicken, or I mean a duckling or whatever, hatchling, and only very few make it to be birds. Here you have babies, humans, sharp drop down at adult. Okay, so you guys have to know these. So there's two things that affect population size besides new babies being born and old people dying, or old animals, It could be, one thing is called immigration. We've heard that word before, haven't we? Immigration. We've also have this other one, emigration. So it sounds like I'm saying the exact same thing, but I'm not. Immigration, emigration. So immigration is movement of individuals into a population from another population. Emigration is movement of individuals out of a population. Now, here's how I remember it. Is for immigration, I remember I, immigration, for into a population. For emigration, I remember E for exit. You might want to write those down. That's definitely going to be on your test. So now we're going to look at some graphs, and there's a couple different kinds of growth in a population. The first type is called exponential. If you remember exponents, if you have this guy here is your exponent, it's like packing a really big number up into a suitcase. If you unpack the suitcase, there's 3 of these in there, it's actually a 27. So exponential is increases dramatically. That's a huge, huge increase. Logistic growth is going to begin slow, and then it's going to be followed by exponential, then it's going to level off. So that would look something like this. Starts off slow, exponential, levels off. That would be exponential growth, or that would be logistic growth. Now, populations can't just grow for no reason. They can't just decline for no reason. So there's something called carrying capacity. Now, this is the maximum number of individuals a species or an environment can actually support. In Unit 8, we're going to talk about how our own planet Earth has a carrying capacity, and that we're getting there. So, not to stress you out, but we're going to talk about that. Also, population crash. That's exactly what it sounds like. If all of a sudden there's a huge decline in a population over a short period of time. Here's an example of, if there, for example, was a forest fire, then there would be a dramatic population crash, not only in the trees that would get burned up, but also in the animals that fled, the animals that died. So there would be a big population crash. If this was the graph and it kind of looked like this, it would look like this all of a sudden. This is the crash. We're going to watch a video in class, you guys, about human population. Super interesting. Now, there's a couple of factors that control population. Now, you're going to need to know this. It's density dependent. Depends on how many people are in the area. Here's an example. Disease. So, a disease would spread very quickly in a densely populated area, like the bubonic plague back in the day. Now, there's some called density independent, where no matter how many people, no matter how many individuals live there, it's still going to be very, very destructive. Here we would have a great example of natural disasters. We can't help it if there's an earthquake, if there's a flood or something. That's going to happen regardless. No matter who's living there, it's going to affect the population. Now, when something is, when something is destroyed, something called succession will happen, and where a new community will begin to take over the area. So if there was a forest fire, for example, there's a forest fire, and all of the animals leave. This burns down. Then eventually what's going to happen is that the trees are going to start growing back again, and more animals will live there again. Now, if it's the first organism to live in a new area, it's called a pioneer species. Like, you know, the pioneers that came from wherever and they rode in the covered wagons and such. So usually moss or lichen is going to be some of the very first species. Now, if there is a fire or a hurricane, then something called secondary succession will happen where it'll replace after. So here we have before, here we have during, here we have after. The ones that survive are going to regrow and create a new cycle. When we get to class, we're going to do something about these little foxes. What does a fox say? That's not your question. Your question is going to be, what is an example of parasitism? Give me my example that I gave you in the PowerPoint. Parasitism. All right. See you guys soon. Bye.